The council chamber still reeked of scorched ice and shadow. The great oaken doors lay shattered, jagged splinters scattered across the floor like bones left after a feast. Torches hissed and sputtered as frost melted, dripping into black puddles that seemed reluctant to fade. No one spoke at first. The echoes of Kaelor's laughter clung to the vaulted ceiling, as though the sorcerer lingered unseen. Lord Dareth was the first to break the silence. His fist struck the table so hard the goblets rattled. "This is madness. He appears in our very hall, freezes our men, and still walks free. And you," his finger jabbed toward Rohan, "stand there with that cursed stone glowing at your breast, claiming victory while the sorcerer mocks us all." Rohan's hand tightened on the hilt of his sword. The crystal at his chest pulsed faintly, as though feeding on his anger. He forced his voice steady. "You saw with your own eyes. It was I who drove him back. Had I yielded, he would have claimed every soul in this chamber." "Or perhaps," Lady Eris hissed, her fur-lined cloak trembling with her words, "it was your power that called him here. The wolf and the shadow, bound by one chain. Tell me, my lord, did Kaelor come to strike at Frosthaven, or to collect what is his?" Murmurs swelled. Some nodded, fear in their eyes. Others looked away, ashamed to doubt the man who had led them through famine, raids, and fire. Aelin's voice cut through the noise like steel drawn from a scabbard. "Enough. You call him cursed, yet who among you raised a blade when Kaelor entered? Who shielded your people when the shadows wrapped the hall? It was Rohan, and Rohan alone. Without him, you would all be corpses on this floor." Lord Dareth sneered. "Spoken like a true loyal hound. But we are not blind. Each time the sorcerer appears, the crystal blazes brighter. Each time, the wolf grows colder, less a man and more a weapon." Rohan stepped forward, his boots crunching over the icy floor. His eyes swept the chamber, meeting those who glared with suspicion and those who averted their gaze in shame. "I will not deny the crystal binds me. But mark this, Kaelor did not break Frosthaven tonight. He fled. And he fled because we stood, not as frightened children whispering in corners, but as a house united." Silence followed, heavy as a tomb. Yet beneath it, whispers crawled like vermin. United? The word rang hollow. Rohan could feel it, trust fracturing, suspicion festering. The Dominion envoy, pale and trembling, finally found his tongue. Perhaps Frosthaven cannot fight this battle alone. The Dominion has sorcerers of its own, scholars who might unbind such chains. If you would consider." "Enough." Aelin's dagger flashed as she slammed it into the table before him. The envoy flinched, nearly falling from his seat. "We have seen your Dominion's games. Your king would sooner chain Rohan than free him. Do not speak of aid when your loyalty lies with the highest bidder." Gasps followed her words, and the envoy stammered protests, but the truth was plain. The council had been infiltrated, manipulated, weakened from within, and Kaelor had walked through the cracks as if they were doorways. Rohan turned from them all, walking to the shattered doorway. Snow whirled in from the courtyard, cold against his scarred face. He looked into the storm and felt its silence press on him heavier than their voices. The wolf had fought the shadow tonight, but the pack itself was crumbling. Behind him, Lord Dareth's voice rose again. "Mark my words, Frosthaven cannot survive with a sorcerer's leash at its throat. Trial by flame failed to reveal the truth. Perhaps steel will." The threat hung like a drawn blade. Rohan closed his eyes, the crystal pulsing against his chest, and wondered whether Frosthaven's greatest danger came from Kaelor's shadows, or from the fear gnawing its own heart hollow. The night after Kaelor's intrusion, Frosthaven did not sleep. The streets were alive with whispers, shutters slammed against the wind, and torches burned in uneasy hands. The people had cheered Rohan's return from the frontier, hailing him savior. Now, those same voices murmured behind closed doors, heavy with dread. Rohan walked the narrow alleys alone, his cloak pulled tight against the snowstorm. He wanted to hear their voices without the formality of banners or council halls. Each step crunched against the ice, echoing in silence too sharp to be natural. Near the eastern wall, he found a gathering. Men and women huddled around a brazier, their faces pale, their words sharper than the wind. "Froze them where they stood," they say. "Not with steel, with a curse. I heard he carries the Black King's heart itself. What if he's no lord at all, but the Shadow's puppet?" The words hit harder than any blade. Rohan lingered at the edge of the firelight, unseen, and for a moment he felt the weight of Kaelor's laughter pressing against his skull. The sorcerer didn't need armies to win. Fear would do the work for him. Then, a child's voice rose above the murmurs. He saved us. A boy, no older than 10, stepped forward. His clothes were patched, his cheeks red from cold. My Da fought at the frontier. He said Lord Rohan stood when all others fell. He said the frost saved his life. The boy's mother pulled him back quickly, eyes darting as though even gratitude was dangerous. Yet something in the crowd shifted. Some looked away in shame, others muttered darker things, but none spoke louder than the boy's courage. Rohan left before they saw him, the crystal at his chest pulsing faintly, as though mocking him. Savior or curse? Which are you, wolf? At the barracks, he found Aelin waiting. Her hair was damp with snow, her blade strapped across her back. She studied him as he entered, her eyes unreadable. They fear you, she said simply. I could hear it all the way from the keep. Rohan unfastened his cloak, his hands stiff with cold. Let them fear. Better that than bow to Kaelor's shadows. Aelin shook her head. Fear is a blade with no hilt. You cannot wield it without bleeding yourself. Today they call you savior, tomorrow they call you curse. Either way, it cuts. He met her gaze, searching for doubt, but found only grim loyalty. Still, there was distance too, like a shield between them. You doubt me as well. I doubt the stone, she admitted. And I doubt what it does to you. But I do not doubt the man I swore to follow. Not yet. Her honesty cut deeper than accusation. For a long while, the only sound was the crackle of fire in the hearth. Then the door burst open. A young soldier, face pale, saluted clumsily. My lord, the men at the north gate, there's unrest. They say you bring danger upon Frosthaven. Some speak of laying down arms unless the council acts. Aelin's hand fell to her dagger. Mutiny? The soldier swallowed. Not yet, but close. Rohan stood, the weight of the crystal heavy as chainmail. He remembered the faces at the brazier, the boy's voice, the mother's fear. He had fought raiders, shadows, and sorcerers. But how did a lord fight the rot of doubt in his own house? He drew his sword, its steel gleaming in the firelight. Then I will speak to them. If they fear the shadow in me, let them look into my eyes and decide whether I am still their lord, or their doom. The soldier bowed, relief and dread mingled in his face. Aelin stepped closer, her voice low. Be careful, Rohan. A wolf cornered by its own pack must decide. Does it bare its fangs, or let itself be torn apart? Outside, the storm howled louder, as if echoing her warning. The north gate loomed over the frozen plain like a grim sentinel, its blackened timbers scarred from past raids. Tonight, it was not raiders but Frosthaven's own soldiers who gathered beneath its shadow. Torches sputtered in the snow, their smoke curling against the storm. The men and women of the watch stood in a half-circle, weapons sheathed but hands restless. Their eyes turned not outward, but inward, toward doubt, toward whispers, toward their lord. Rohan approached without heralds, cloak flaring in the wind. His breath misted before him, each exhale a mark of mortal flesh against the inhuman chill that clung to the crystal at his chest. Aelin trailed at his side, her hand near her blade, though her gaze moved constantly, weighing every face in the crowd. The soldiers parted reluctantly, as if yielding to him were against their will. In the center, Captain Tharek, a veteran with a scar running from temple to jaw, stepped forward. He bowed stiffly, but his voice carried no deference. My lord, he began, the men are uneasy. Whispers of Kaelor's shadow have taken root. They say you bear its mark, that the frost that shields us comes at too dark a cost. The words rippled through the crowd like a stone tossed into still water. Torches guttered. Rohan stood silent, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of his sword. I fought beside you, Tharek continued, his voice rough with loyalty warping into fear. I saw you turn the tide against the raiders. But men wonder. Was it you who saved us, or the shadow that consumes us? Murmurs rose. A dozen pairs of eyes, then 24, glowed in the torchlight with doubt. Rohan let the silence stretch, the storm's howl filling the space where his defense might have been. Finally, he spoke, low, steady, each word measured like steel laid across an anvil. I have bled for Frosthaven since before many of you bore a sword. I have buried brothers in its soil, watched comrades fall to keep its walls standing. And yes, the frost answers to me now. I do not deny it. The crowd shifted uneasily. But hear me, he continued, raising his voice. The frost is no curse. It is a weapon, one I will wield, so that Kaelor does not. Would you rather see it in his hands, wielded against your wives and children? Or in mine, sworn to defend them? A hush fell. The snow thickened, clinging to armor, to cloaks, to faces struggling with fear and faith. Then, from the back, a soldier shouted, and when it consumes you? What then? Who defends us from you? Steel hissed, Aelin's blade, half drawn. But Rohan lifted a hand, stopping her. His eyes sought the soldier in the shadows. If that day comes, Rohan said, his voice like frost cracking stone, then you will do what must be done. You will end me, better by your hands than Kaelor's. The admission struck the crowd harder than defiance could. To name his own death as safeguard, it silenced the mutterings, left them staring as though at a man both doomed and unbreakable. Captain Tharek lowered his head, shame flickering in his scarred face. Slowly, he knelt, pressing his fist to his chest. Forgive me, my lord. I doubted. One by one, others followed, until the half-circle bent knee, torches guttering in the storm. Not all bowed willingly, but enough to hold the line of loyalty, for now. Rohan looked over them, the weight of victory heavy as defeat. These were his soldiers, his people. Yet he had won them not with trust, but with the promise of his own destruction. Aelin sheathed her blade softly beside him. Her eyes met his, unreadable. You've steadied the wolf pack, she murmured. But a pack that tastes doubt once will taste it again. Rohan said nothing. The storm raged above the walls, and the crystal at his chest throbbed faintly, like a heart not his own. The council chamber smelled of ash and candle wax, a gloom settling heavy over its vaulted ceiling. Snow beat against the high windows, dull thuds muffled by stone, as if the storm itself sought to enter and take part in their quarrels. Rohan sat at the head of the long oaken table, his gauntlets resting upon its scarred surface. Aelin lingered behind him, shadow to his flame, her hand ever near her sword. Lords and envoys filled the chamber, cloaks wet from the storm, tempers colder still. At the far end, Lord Vaynor, a hawk-nosed man with a tongue sharpened by years of intrigue, rose to his feet. He unfurled a parchment, the seal of a border town cracked and broken. His voice carried with practiced resonance. Word from Heron's Ford, he said, eyes flicking to measure every reaction. A gathering of zealots has declared Rohan no savior, but a vessel of Kaelor himself. They call him the Frostmarked. They've driven Frosthaven's tax collectors from the town, and worse, they swear loyalty not to our council, but to the Dominion envoy. The chamber stirred like a nest of hornets. Hands thumped tables, voices rose, a dozen lords speaking at once. Blasphemy, one spat. Treason, cried another. But beneath the outrage throbbed a deeper fear, the kind that spread faster than fire. Rohan did not move. He let the storm of words crash against the table, his silence more weight than fury. When he finally rose, the chamber stilled. Kaelor breeds doubt as wolves breed hunger, he said. Every whisper, every spark of rebellion, these are his weapons. He seeks to turn our own against us, so that when he comes in flesh, we will already be broken. Or perhaps, Lord Vaynor cut in, venom coiled in his words, Kaelor need not come at all. Perhaps he already sits among us. The chamber froze. Eyes swung to Rohan, suspicion thick as frost. The envoy of the Dominion, a slender woman cloaked in crimson silk, watched with unreadable calm, her hands folded, her lips curled in the faintest of smiles. Rohan's gauntlets clenched. You speak treason. I speak truth feared but unspoken, Vaynor hissed. The crystal at your chest pulses when you rage, its light flaring like Kaelor's own. How long before it bends you? How long before you turn Frosthaven's strength against us all? The words struck like a blade finding the seam in armor. Even Aelin's fingers tightened on her sword hilt. Rohan stepped forward, slow, deliberate, until he stood across the table from Vaynor. Would you rather I cast the crystal aside, let its power fall to Kaelor unchallenged? Tell me, Lord, how many of your kin would still breathe if I had done so? Vaynor faltered, but pride held him upright. Better no weapon at all than a weapon that devours its wielder. The envoy's soft laugh cut through the chamber. A quaint debate, she purred. But you waste precious hours. While you bicker, Kaelor's agents weave rebellion from town to town. Soon the storm will not be at your gates, it will be within them. All eyes turned to her. Some with hatred, others with the hunger of men who saw advantage in her words. She smiled, letting silence frame her. Rohan slammed his gauntlet upon the table. The wood shuddered, parchment scattering like frightened birds. Enough. His voice rolled like thunder. If rebellion spreads, I will ride to Heron's fort myself. Let those zealots see with their own eyes what it means to defy Frosthaven. The declaration fell heavy, dividing the chamber. Some nodded, eager for strength. Others paled, fearing his wrath would only stoke the fire. Aelin leaned close, whispering, "This is what Kaelor wants, your blood spilled among your own." A trap. Rohan's jaw clenched, the crystal throbbing faintly against his chest. Was it his heart's beat, or Kaelor's? Night sank over Frosthaven like a black tide. The council had scattered to their keeps, muttering and scheming, but the echoes of accusation still rang in Rohan's mind. Within the barracks courtyard, torches sputtered against the wind as he gathered his chosen men. Steel rang in the chill as horses were saddled, cloaks fastened, provisions packed. Their breath clouded the air, the silence among them heavier than the snow-laden sky. Aelin approached, helm tucked under her arm, her expression carved from the same stone as the walls. "You mean to ride tonight?" "The longer I wait, the more rot takes root," Rohan said, tightening the strap on his gauntlet. "Every hour, Heron's ford drifts further from Frosthaven's hand. Or further into Kaelor's," she muttered. Her doubt gnawed at him, not because it was misplaced, but because it was too near the truth. The crystal beneath his cuirass pulsed like a second heart, as though eager for the blood to come. Before he could answer, the sound of steel rasping broke the night. From the shadow of the gate, figures emerged, hoods drawn low, blades glinting amber in torchlight. They moved like hunters, silent and precise. "Assassins," Aelin spat, sword already in her grip. The first lunged for Rohan, dagger aimed at his throat. He caught the man's wrist mid-strike, crushing bone with a twist of his gauntlet, the assassin's scream torn away by the wind. Another came from his flank, only to meet Aelin's blade, steel shearing through cloak and flesh alike. Chaos erupted in the courtyard. Torches toppled, shadows danced, and men shouted as the assassins fell upon them in a storm of knives and short swords. Rohan's soldiers, caught unawares, scrambled to draw weapons. Rohan swung his greatsword free, its edge singing as it cleaved through the night. He fought with brutal precision, each strike felling an enemy, yet for each cut, another slipped from the shadows. Their faces were hidden, but their whispers echoed with a single word, frost-marked. The crystal at his chest flared, its light bleeding through his armor seams. With each pulse, his strikes grew faster, stronger, more merciless. He drove his blade through two men in a single arc, their blood steaming upon the snow. But in that moment, fear sparked in the eyes of his own men, not fear of the assassins, but of him. They saw the glow, the raw violence that seemed less man than beast. "Rohan," Aelin's voice cut through the haze. "Control it." He staggered, the sword dripping red, breath ragged. The assassins broke and fled, vanishing into the storm beyond the walls. Silence returned, broken only by the groans of the dying. One soldier knelt, clutching his side. Another lay still, snow already covering his face. The courtyard reeked of iron and smoke. Aelin seized Rohan's arm, eyes blazing. "Do you see? They came not only to kill you, but to show your men what you've become. Every drop of fear they saw tonight feeds Kaelor's game." Rohan looked at his men, at the wary distance in their eyes, at the way some avoided his gaze entirely. His hand trembled upon the hilt, the crystal still burning with unspent fury. "Who sent them?" he growled. One dying assassin, pinned to the ground by a spear, coughed blood and spat a final curse. "The council cleanses itself. Frosthaven will not kneel to a demon." His head lolled, lifeless. Rohan's gauntlets clenched until metal shrieked. Treachery was no longer at Frosthaven's gates. It was within. The dead were buried before dawn, their bodies sealed beneath frost and stone outside the eastern wall. Rohan stood apart as the men lowered their fallen comrades into the earth, his cloak stiff with blood. The wind howled low, as though mourning, yet no voice among his soldiers spoke. They would not look at him. Not openly. Not as they once had. Some muttered thanks for his sword. Others muttered prayers when his shadow passed them. Fear had slipped into their marrow like a slow poison. Aelin approached, her face pale in the moonlight. You can't ignore this, she said quietly. The assassins failed, but the true wound was struck in here. She tapped her chest. Doubt. That's what Kaelor planted tonight. Rohan's jaw tightened. Then let him choke on it. But his voice cracked. Even as he spoke, the crystal at his chest throbbed. In its pulse, he heard it, faint, mocking laughter. That night, sleep came only as a cruel jest. He drifted into dreams blacker than tar, where snow fell upward and the stars bled across the sky. In the center of that endless dark stood Kaelor. Cloaked in shadow, his eyes burned like pale coals, his smile carved cruel and knowing. You fight so hard to deny me, the sorcerer purred, his voice carrying as though whispered directly into Rohan's skull. Yet when the blades came, whose power saved you? Whose gift struck down the faithless? Rohan clenched his fists. It was not your gift, it was my hand, my blade. Kaelor's laughter echoed, sharp as breaking ice. Your hand is nothing without the frost that binds it. Every time you strike, I move through you. Every time you draw breath, the crystal drinks deeper. Do you not feel it, wolf? Do you not feel how thin the veil grows? The world around them shifted. The snow became corpses, their faces those of Rohan's men. Frost gripped their limbs, their mouths frozen mid-plea. Among them lay Aelin, her eyes wide with terror, her lips cracked with frost. No. Rohan stumbled toward her, dropping to his knees, trying to lift her from the ice. But she shattered beneath his touch, breaking into shards that cut his palms. Kaelor's form towered over him, the shadows swirling higher, his laughter booming. You cannot save them from me. Not her, not your soldiers, not your people. Each day you wear the mask of a lord, but beneath it you are already mine. Why fight the storm when you are the storm? Rohan roared, drawing his dream-forged blade, swinging with all his fury. But the strike passed through Kaelor as though through smoke. The sorcerer's laughter only deepened, curling around him like chains. You will burn Frosthaven with your own hands, Kaelor whispered. And when they curse your name, when they fear your shadow more than mine, you will beg me to claim you. Rohan jolted awake, breath ragged, sweat chilling his skin. His chambers were dark, the fire long since guttered. But the crystal still glowed faintly beneath his armor, warm as a living heart. He rose, staggering to the window. Outside, Frosthaven lay silent under the snow, the towers piercing a pale sky. Yet even here, in the stillness of his keep, he could feel it, the laughter, low and distant, never gone. Behind him, the door creaked. Aelin stood in the doorway, candle in hand. She studied him with weary eyes, then stepped closer. You dreamed again. He did not answer. His silence was enough. She placed the candle down, her hand brushing the hilt of her dagger though she did not draw it. The council is fracturing. Lords Dareth and Eris rally behind your blood. They whisper that Frosthaven cannot be ruled by sorcery, even if it wears a crown. If they move against you, then let them come, Rohan said, voice hoarse. I will not fall to their daggers. Aelin's gaze darkened. Rohan, it isn't the daggers you should fear. It's what they will make you do when they drive you to use that power again. Every time it answers your call, you step closer to him. And one night, you won't wake. Rohan turned back to the window, watching snow drift across the stones. His reflection in the glass was not wholly his own, shadows swirled faintly at its edges. I will not be his, he whispered. But even he could not say whether the words were promise or prayer. The words hung in the air like frost, biting and bitter. Rohan's fists trembled as he stared at the black bowl, its surface smooth and still now, betraying nothing of the horror it had just shown him. Aelin's grip tightened on his sleeve, her voice sharp but hushed. You're not believing this hag, are you? She's twisting you. The witch chuckled, a sound that slithered like dry leaves across stone. The girl clings to hope, but she is blind. You feel it, wolf. Every breath you draw feeds the one you fight. Rohan closed his eyes, Kaelor's voice already gnawing at his resolve, echoing like iron striking ice. Yes. Feed me. Struggle harder, and you only make me stronger. He slammed his palm on the table. Enough. If the choice is my death or damnation, then you've given me nothing. The witch's smile was cold. It is not my task to soften fate. Only to speak it. Aelin pulled him toward the door, muttering under her breath. We've wasted enough time here. Let her rot in her shadows. We'll find another way. But as the door creaked open, the night howled back at them. Wolves stood in the clearing, their eyes glowing pale as moons. The snow churned beneath their paws as more shadows slipped from the tree line, circling, watching. The witch did not move. They come because they smell the stone. It calls to them, just as it calls to worse things. Aelin drew her dagger, her voice low and fierce. Rohan. He nodded, unslinging his sword. The blade caught the faint torchlight, a shard of silver against the black wood. The wolves growled, their breath steaming, their bodies tense. And then one leapt. Steel flashed. Rohan met the beast in midair, his blade shearing through fur and bone. Hot blood splashed the snow, steaming where it fell. But the pack did not retreat. They pressed closer, lips curled, hackles raised. The crystal pulsed. His vision narrowed. He felt the hunger again, the promise of an easier kill if only he let it take him. His veins burned with its cold fire. Use me. No, he snarled aloud, driving his sword into another wolf that lunged too close. Aelin fought at his side, quick and fierce, her dagger burying itself in a throat before she spun to slash another. The clearing became chaos, snarls, screams, steel on flesh. Snow churned red beneath their boots. And then, a sound louder than the pack itself, a horn. Long, low, echoing through the forest. The wolves froze, ears twitching, eyes turning as though commanded by some unseen master. One by one, they slunk back into the dark, melting into the trees until only silence remained. Rohan stood panting, blade slick with blood, his breath ragged clouds in the night. Aelin wiped her dagger clean, her face pale but steady. The witch's laugh broke the silence. Do you see, wolf? Even the beasts are pawns in the game you carry. It will never end, not while that stone drinks from you. Rohan glared at her, but the words bit deep. The horn still echoed in his mind. It wasn't chance. Someone had called the wolves, and someone had called them back. Who was that? He asked, his voice low. The witch's smile twisted. You'll know soon. He hunts you already. Aelin grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the hut. Then we move. Now. Before they send worse than wolves. Rohan didn't argue. The trees loomed darker than before, the silence heavier. But in the back of his mind, he felt Kaelor laughing still, as though the witch, the wolves, and even the horn were only steps in a game the Black King had already mastered. The forest seemed alive with silence. Snow clung to branches like frozen fingers, and each step Rohan took left a deep imprint that vanished almost immediately beneath a fresh dusting of frost. The horn's echo still lingered, a ghost that refused to fade, reminding him that someone, or something, was hunting them. Aelin moved beside him, her eyes scanning the darkness, dagger ready, breath coming in sharp, controlled bursts. Rohan, she whispered, whatever that horn meant, it wasn't just to scare the wolves. Someone knows we're here. Rohan tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword, feeling the pulse of the crystal against his chest. Its cold thrum had steadied the wolf fight, but now it was a warning, a heartbeat that whispered of danger in every shadow. They come for you, wolf. They will not wait. A snapping branch made him spin, blade raised. From the underbrush, a figure emerged, not a wolf, not entirely human either. Cloaked in gray and fur, the hunter moved with a predator's grace, eyes gleaming in the torchlight they carried, reflecting the crystal's faint pulse. You're far from home, the hunter said, voice low, calm, yet sharp like steel. And carrying more than you know. Rohan's teeth ground together. Who are you? The figure stepped closer, revealing the edge of a mask that hid most of his face. A friend, or a test? That depends entirely on your next choice. Aelin's hand went to Rohan's arm. Don't trust him. The hunter tilted his head. Trust is for those who have not yet died. Then, almost in a whisper, I know the Black King's hand in your curse. I know Kaelor. I know why your stone hums. Rohan felt a shiver crawl down his spine. Then why are you here? To guide you, if you can survive the lesson. He crouched slightly, scanning the tree line. The wolves were only the beginning. There are others, hunters, killers, sorcerers, all drawn to the stone. You've been marked long before you ever took up the sword. Aelin stepped forward, defiance in her posture. And you? Are you one of them? The hunter laughed, low and humorless. I could be, if it suited me. But I am bound to another oath, one older than your kingdoms, older than the Black King himself. I hunt what hunts you. Rohan's mind raced. The crystal pulsed faster, warmer now, eager, almost impatient. He could feel Kaelor's laughter twisting inside him, coiling like a viper. How do I know this isn't another trick? The hunter's eyes flickered with shadow. Because your enemies are patient, wolf. They wait until the right moment to strike, and they always strike from behind. I give you a choice. Follow my path and learn the truth, or walk blind and die unaware. Rohan's gaze dropped to the snow, where faint footprints led deeper into the forest. He could see the danger, feel the pull of the crystal, the pull of Kaelor's whisper. The hunter extended a gloved hand. Step into the darkness willingly, or be pulled by fate anyway. Either way, the wolves are only the first lesson. Aelin's eyes pleaded with him, but Rohan's jaw set. The frost within him ached, hungering for action. If he didn't confront this now, he would be dragged along Kaelor's cruel game forever. He took the hand. Lead the way. But if this is a trap? The hunter's grin was visible even behind the mask. Then we both die trying. The forest swallowed them, silent except for the crunch of boots on snow. Somewhere above, a lone raven cawed, carrying its own warning, Kaelor's shadow stretching across the path ahead. The forest grew darker as they pressed onward, the moonlight struggling through thick boughs. Each breath seemed heavier in the cold air, mingling with the pulse of the crystal against Rohan's chest. Its warmth was no longer comforting, it was a warning. The forest itself felt alive, almost aware of their intrusion, shadows shifting with a predator's patience. Stop! The hunter's voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. He crouched behind a snow-laden tree, motioning for Rohan and Aelin to do the same. There's movement ahead. Not wolves, not men, something older, and far more cunning. Rohan's eyes scanned the darkness, muscles tensed. Show me. The hunter extended a finger, pointing at faint outlines between the trunks. Humanoid figures, draped in rags and chains, glinting faintly in the moonlight. Their eyes burned with pale, unnatural fire. The Black King's servants, the hunter whispered. Kaelor has sent them ahead, to test the wolf's prey instinct. And perhaps, to taste your fear. Aelin swallowed hard, drawing her dagger, the silver catching a stray moonbeam. They're dead, she said. Bodies or cursed shadows? They are neither fully alive nor fully dead, the hunter answered. They are bound to Kaelor's will, instruments of his cruelty. Touch them, and your own frost will answer to his laughter. Rohan clenched the hilt of his sword, feeling the crystal's cold bite deepen. The whisper of Kaelor coiled within his mind. Fear them, Iceborn. Freeze them. Let me see your strength, and your failure. The first figure moved closer, its step silent, unnatural. Rohan lifted his sword, but the frost pulsed along its edge without command, crawling across the snow like living tendrils. The cursed servant's eyes locked with his, and he could feel a tug at the stone, a pull that threatened to overtake his own will. Hold, the hunter shouted. Do not strike first. Let them make the mistake. One figure lunged suddenly, and instinctively, Rohan's arm moved. Frost shot from the blade, solidifying the air, snapping branches like brittle twigs. Yet the figure passed through the ice as if it were mist, unharmed. The pulse in the crystal surged, mocking him, reminding him that Kaelor had anticipated every move. Aelin hissed, Rohan, they're bait. The hunter nodded. Exactly. Kaelor wants you to strike, to let your frost answer to his control. If you falter, or give in too quickly, he will taste your soul. Rohan's jaw tightened. He could feel the pull of the frost, the temptation to unleash the crystal's full power and end this immediately. But he remembered the hunter's warning, the taste of strategy over instinct. Slowly, carefully, he backed toward a small clearing where moonlight pooled, drawing the cursed servants away from the trees. Good, the hunter murmured. Now we see their pattern. The cursed figures began to circle, their movements unnaturally coordinated, as though a single mind directed them. Rohan noticed the gap between them, the lag in their formation, an opportunity. He signaled Aelin, who read the movement instantly. Together, they could exploit it, if they could resist Kaelor's whisper long enough. A sudden howl pierced the night, distant yet close enough to make Rohan's blood chill. The cursed servants froze for a heartbeat, eyes turning to the sound. Then one stepped forward, breaking the pattern. Kaelor's hand was in play. He was testing them, teaching them fear before the trap closed fully. Rohan clenched his fists, the frost crawling along his veins like a living thing. The hunter's eyes gleamed behind the mask. The first snare is set, wolf. Your choice. Leap or linger. Hesitate, and Kaelor wins before the fight begins. Rohan drew a slow breath, feeling Aelin's hand brush his arm. He saw the path, the gap, the chance, and the trap that waited beyond. His mind steadied, the crystal's pulse slowing slightly as he wrestled control. "Then let's see who hunts whom," he said, voice low but firm, the first real defiance he'd felt since the frost first twisted his power. The cursed servants advanced, and the forest itself seemed to lean in, silent and waiting. The first true test of Kaelor's snare had begun, and Rohan knew that once it started, there would be no turning back. Rohan and Aelin face Kaelor's cursed servants in a deadly trap, where instinct, frost, and control collide. The forest becomes a battlefield of mind and magic, testing Rohan's mastery over the iceborne power, and his will against Kaelor.